For the sprinkler head, you will find pieces listed under the spout in both the medium weight, that's these 4 circles, and then under the lightweight chipboard, that's these 2 pieces. We'll need our compass and a way to sharpen our compass point here. Now, the sprinkler head is what's called a frustum. Now, a frustum is part of a cone, and I just happen to have a cone here. And if you were to take a section through this cone that is parallel to the base, you would get a part that has like slanty sides and a base and a top that are parallel. And that's what we want to do, we're going to have for our sprinkler heads, so that the sides kind of come out like that. So in order to do that, we need to cut part of a circle from our chipboard. And I made sure I have a good sharp point on my compass. I have my sharpener out here. And I'm going to, this piece is 8 inches long. I'm going to mark a center point down near one edge, about 1/8 of an inch up from that edge. I'm going to put a center point. And then my outside radius is going to be 3 15/16. That's a 1/16 of an inch less than 4 inches. And I'm just opening up my compass using my craft mat to get to that measurement. And then I'll put my point in where I drew that, and I'll just draw an arc here. Now the inside radius is 3 3/8, and I'll just sharpen my point real quickly here and measure out 3 3/8. I'll put it in that same point here, and I'll draw an arc all the way around. Now I came really close to this edge up here, so I'm going to increase the width of this piece on the cutting instructions. Now I'm going to cut out this arc, and I find it personally easier to cut inside arcs with a sharp blade on my craft knife, and then I can cut the outside arc just like we've cut circles before. So I'll go ahead and get that cut. Next we need to do a little gluing, and on our medium weight circles we have pieces that are labeled top inside and outside and bottom inside and outside. And we'll just glue the insides to the outsides and center them. Just use some blobs of glue. Next we'll take our little piece of sprinkler head support and we'll score it at 2 inches and 4 inches and 6 inches. 2, 4, 6. Next we'll fold on our creases to make a triangle, and make sure it stays flat there. If you have a tiny attacher, you can use that to put a couple staples in, and if you don't, just use some score tape or glue to make that little triangle. Then we'll take that triangle and put some glue along the bottom edge and center it in the bottom inside piece. Just push down for a second and then let that dry, or at least set up. While that glue's setting up, I'm going to my top inside, and I'm going to draw a circle that has a 1 1/2 inch diameter, and that'll give me kind of an aiming point because I'm going to want to glue these two pieces together. So I'm going to take some glue, put it on this triangle, and then I'll just put my head right directly on top of this so that I can get these two circles aligned. And once you put this top one on, you can just take your ruler and go straight down like this and make sure that you've got an even amount going all the way around. And then we'll let that little sandwich dry. So you want to make sure that this unit is absolutely dry and stable before you continue on. And this strip has been sized so that it will fit in between that top and bottom piece and rest on those inside circles. And it just will fit nicely around there. So I'm just going to do a dry fit right now and just work my way around. And once I've come all the way around to the beginning, I can make some tick marks so that I can cut this off so I can make a nice little butt joint there. So now I'm ready to start gluing, and I will get the first part started here. Just pick a place and put some glue down. Get that stuck inside of there, and then you can see I've got a couple of pieces of blue tape here so that I can get it kind of clamped down. And now I'll just work my way around, and then when I get to the other end I'll use that other piece of blue tape to hold it there in place. I'm just working a couple inches at a time. And when I get to the end, I've put some glue where that join will be as well. And then I'll let that unit dry. While the chipboard is drying, we can cut a piece of cardstock to go around that edge. And I have, you need a piece that's at least 5 1/4 inch tall by 11 inches long. And I'm going to make a tick mark about 1/8 of an inch up from this edge, and I'll measure 5 1/4 inches down. So 1/8 of an inch from the edge and 5 1/4 from the left edge. Now I'm going to make a series of 4 semicircles. The first one, the radius is 5 1/16, so I'm just using my ruler on my mat, and I've got a good sharpened point here on my compass. I'll put that in here at that center mark that I did and scribe this arc. Now, I like to sharpen in between each time, and my next arc will be 4 11/16. 4 11/16. That's 1/16 of an inch shorter than 4 3/4. So find the 4 3/4 mark and the 4 5/8 mark, and set your compass so it will make an arc right between those. Come again to this center point here and scribe another arc. Our third circle is 4 1/16. So come to the 4 inch, find the 1/8 inch mark, and go halfway in between those two. Come to that center point and draw that circle, or semicircle I should say. And then our last one is 3 11/16. 3 11/16. And again, that is 1/16 of an inch shorter than the 3/4 mark. Come to that same center point and draw your arc. So I think they're kind of showing in the light here. We've got 4 semicircles. Now I'm just going to cut on the outermost and the innermost. Now on the outermost circle, I think I can use some 1/4 inch tape. I'm just going to put it in between the edge and the next drawn circle. And it's okay if it gets a little bit folded along the way. These are just going to be tabs, so. And I think we can use the 1/4 inch on the innermost too. So this goes in between the cut edge and the other line. And you can see, I think, that mine is kind of curving up here. There's no problem with that. So just burnish your score tape on. So now that my frustum is dry, I'm going to take some 1/4 inch score tape and I'm going to go along the top edge and then also the bottom edge on the side. And I've started away from this seam. And then just run your thumb along here so that you can get that tape attached to the side and then give it a good burnish. Now we'll just do a little dry fit, and you can start anywhere where the side should fit in between the 2 lines that are drawn there. So we just want to get a kind of a length for it. You can put it down on your table and just kind of go around. It's okay, we will allow it to be a little bit longer. I'm going to cut it about allow about a 1/2 inch overlap. So I'm just going to come here and cut it. And then I'll find my starting position on this score tape here. And I'm going to use the lines. They may be hard for you to see. I can see them. And which way am I going? I'm going the wrong way. I want to go this. I work from left to right, so I'll peel up this backing and look and see where my lines are and just get it started. And just kind of work your way around, keeping it tight up against there. And just keeping your eye on the line. It should just kind of roll right along and fit in there because it's been sized to be the correct shape to do this. When you get down here to the end, I don't think you need more than a 1/2 inch maximum overlap. So I'm going to recut this. And I will reach in here and put some score tape right on that edge. And then I'll peel back these top and bottom ones a little bit. So now I can complete that circle. So now we've got this. And what we'll do is we'll fasten these, we'll make some snips down to the chipboard and then fasten these pieces along to the 2 sides. Now, I don't like to pull off lots of tiny little pieces of score tape backing, and I have these non-stick scissors. So I'm just going to take my scissors and I'll rest the point right against that chipboard there, and I'll go maybe every 3/16 of an inch, 1/4 inch or so, and just make a series of snips along there. Once I've made my snips all the way around, and I'm just doing one side at a time, I'm just going to take my thumb and go just lightly to start with around that edge, just to kind of get these guys to think about folding over. And then I'll go a little bit more and a little bit more. And obviously they have to overlap some. But that way you'll get a nice kind of finish going on here on the edge. And we will, of course, eventually burnish that. And then I'll flip it over and repeat that process on the top part. And then when you're finished, make sure you give everything a good burnish. cut out the decorative paper that will go around the rim of the sprinkler head, I'm going to use this paper that was left over from the watering can. You can, of course, use whatever paper you want. It's a little bit narrow for making the measurement that we need, so I've cut a piece of white cardstock that is 1 inch wide by 7, and I'm going to just butt it up against the bottom edge here, starting from that left side. I'll flip it over, and I've got a couple of little pieces of blue tape that I can use to secure it in position. Next, down this white area, I'm going to measure 5 inches over from the left, and I'll just make a line just in the white area, like so. And then I'm going to measure 4 3/4 down from the top of the decorative paper and make a cross mark coming across that line. So 4 3/4 in this direction. And now this is the place I'm going to put my compass. I have a good sharp point on my compass. I've set it to 4-inch radius, a 4-inch radius. I'll put the point at this plus and I'll draw the arc. After I've made this arc, I've sharpened my point and I've set the radius to be 4 9/16. 4 9/16. That's a 1/16 of an inch more than 4 1/2. And I'll put my compass point in the same location and draw that other arc. It will be larger than the first one we drew. So now I'll carefully cut out this arc. So I cut this piece out with my craft knife, and I'm ready to do a little dry fit. And I'll just center one end and put a little piece of low-tack tape on it. And now we'll just go around, and I'm keeping a reveal at the top and the bottom. And see how that goes. And then you can see I've got quite a bit of excess here. I'm just going to trim that down till I have about a 1/2 inch or so. So after I trimmed my piece to length, I inked the edges with vintage photo, and I've prepped the back side with 1/8 inch score tape. It's okay if it's a little curved, because that's the shape that it needs to take in order to go around the sprinkler head. And now I'll just choose one end and remove a little bit of the backing and get it centered top and bottom so I have a little bit of a reveal. And then I'll just work my way around. I'll overlap the ends at the end, and then I'll give this a good burnish. To finish off the top, we're going to inset a circle of the blue cardstock in this center. And when I measured mine, I have 2 3/4, or just, you want it to be slightly smaller, so I'm going to use a 2 3/4 inch circle. And you can either set your compass to 1 3/8 to get that circle, or if you have a circle template with a 2 3/4 circle, you can use that. So cut out that circle. So here's my circle that I've cut to go inside of here. I'm just going to use a little wet glue, just a little bit, and glue that in place. And you can see it just fits right in the middle there. You just don't want any overlapping. So for the decorative paper that's going to go on the top of the sprinkler head, I'm starting with a 3 1/2 inch square of decorative paper. And you can see I've taped it down to my craft mat, and I've centered it so that 1/4 inch on each of these corners is coming through. You see that? So now that's centered on there. And I'm going to draw some lines. I'm going to draw a line that comes right down the center, and I'll draw them kind of dark so hopefully you can see them. You just have to draw them dark enough so you can see them. And then I'm going to draw 2 more on either side of that are at the 1/2 inch away from that first one. So just come over to the 1 inch mark on the mat and draw a line, and then come over another 1/2 inch and draw another line. And repeat that on this side. Now you're going to draw the same kind of pattern. Start with a line that comes right across the center. Put 2 lines at a 1/2 inch on either side of it. Then sharpen the point on your compass and set it to a radius of 1 5/8 inches, 1 5/8 inches. Put the point right there in that center and draw a circle. Now that's all the drawing we need to do, so we can remove this from our mat. And we're going to put some good score tape coverage on the back. Once you have your score tape on the back, go ahead and cut out your circle. Now that we have our circle cut out, our next step is going to be to punch some holes at most of these intersections so it will look more like a sprinkler head. But we're not going to use all of these intersections, so we'll do a little selective erasing. So the basic pattern is that in the center, these 5 intersections will get holes, and then the line on either side of center gets 5 holes. And the same thing going across. So there's a hole, there's an intersection in each of these corners that we don't want to punch. So I'm going to erase that. And now if you hold it this way, you should see, and here's the center. There's 3 on this row. Then there's 5 on this next row. 5 in the center. 5 in the row right underneath center. And then finally, there are 3 right here at the bottom. So those are the places we're going to punch holes. Now, if you have a crocodile, it won't reach into those innermost circles, so you have to use something like a big bite, or if you have a tool called a Japanese screw punch, you could use that as well. So just take your big bite and set it so it's on the smaller, makes the smaller hole, and line up each one of those intersections we just discussed and punch the holes. Once you've punched all those holes, go ahead and erase all of your lines. Next, I'm going to ink around the outside with a little vintage photo. And then this piece will get centered on the top of the sprinkler head. So just remove your score tape backing and burnish it in place. Well, originally I did not plan to put any cardstock on the bottom of this, but a little bit will show if you stuck your head underneath there. So I've decided to put a circle there. So I've cut a square of cardstock that is 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, and I've backed it with score tape. And I'll use my circle template. Mine is measuring about 2¼ inches here. So I'll use my circle template to make a 2¼ inch circle. If you don't have a circle template, you can use your compass. Just set it at 1 1/8 inch radius. 1 1/8 inch radius. Now I don't want to have any overlapping, so if you need to trim this a little bit so it'll fit in there, it's okay to have some of the chipboard showing, but just cut it so that it will fit inside of that circle. Now I've just made a little mark here so I can align it, and then I'll stick my cardstock circle down and burnish it in place. Now that we've filled in this spot here, because sometimes these little tabs, they get a lot of stress put on them and they want to kind of pop up a little bit. So I'm going to, this is another square of cardstock that I backed with score tape, and I'm going to cut a 2 3/4 inch diameter circle, 2 3/4 inch diameter would be a 1 3/8 radius circle, and I'm going to put that on there and burnish that well in place. And we do all of this not just for neatness, but the score tape is that we want to have good adhesion because we're going to make a glue joint there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my circle and put it in place. Alright, now I'm happy with that. And if you watch any of my videos, you'll know I'm kind of a belt and suspender person. If you think this is a bridge too far for you, then don't do it. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. So now we're ready to attach this to the spout. So I'm looking for my seam, and my seam is right here, and I've decided to have my seam pointing towards the center here. And you can, of course, put your seam anywhere you want. And then other than that, it's a matter of getting it set on the bottom here so that you have the kind of overhang that you want to have. So I've just put it upside down here on my craft mat, and I'm looking at it and deciding where I want to have it. And I've made kind of a line here to align it. And then I'll pick this up and put some blobs of glue on here. And then I'll turn it back over and align it with that line I drew. And then I'll support the spout from underneath with one hand. You can see how I've got my left hand there. And then I'll put a little pressure on the sprinkler head. And then I'll allow that to dry thoroughly.